Hello, everybody. Kirk Spano and Scott Shooter Henderson, March 23rd, 2024. We're talking big stuff. Shooter, what's big?
What's big? Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is big. Yeah, just talked about that in the macro dashes. Yeah. Tell me about Bitcoin and the dollar and whatever you want to talk about first.
Now, let's start off with now, one of the challenging things is where we are is, I always, at least my thesis, we always get a read. And now the one thing that is positive right where we are on the weekly is that RSI is on the high side this last drop. So I don't think we're done. However, if we look at our shorter term count, I'm also showing you the possibility of a much deeper drawdown to maybe about 51K, which happens to be right about where our trend support lines. So that would take out the April 2021 lows. Now that should be flush. I mean, a flush real quick, and then we're out of that. I think they'll buy it back once we break. Now we have basically come down and tagged this trend support line here as well. So, that's a little bit of a challenge because this mound in RSI to me is now the confirmed mound, which means this next push is going to be much more euphoric than what we've had, or at least that's my take. Make sense?
Yeah. And what's your target for, say, 6 or 12 months out?
Well, I think by year end, I think we're going to be somewhere between 85 and 115. I mean, it really depends on whether this turns into a flat. See this flat that we have here for, since December of 23 through February, if we do this and just, over in this range, it puts us out to, later June in that flat. And it really depends on how long we stay there, whether or not we get above 100K, I think this year. But I think 150 is actually viable with the adoption numbers we're seeing. Even Hood is pumping 401k transfers over there for people to start investing over there, and they're offering a 3% cash rebate with no limit. That's going to move a lot of people over to Hood just because of that 3% bonus to sign on board. So,
more importantly, Robinhood is pushing money towards Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you click on iBet real quick, because that's the one that I'm telling people to use. I have limit orders in at 33.
Okay.
I mean, if we get some real downward momentum, I can lower that to say 32. It looks like you're seeing low 30s as well as probably the bottom.
I'm just doing a visual off of the legs because I can't even get a scan on it that's decent. Right now we're at, what I consider to be trend support for where we are now. This could move a little bit lower if we use the first two legs and extend that out. So it could come down to about 31.87. It's still done nothing wrong if it comes all the way down to $30 though.
So my $32, $33 orders are about right. And I just got to keep an eye on them.
I'd stagger those. I'd even do 35, 33, and 30.
Okay.
Your blend is basically the same thing as 33, but for sure you get a piece on at 35.
Right.
I mean, one of the challenges that we've had here in Bitcoin is that we're not getting past the 382 fib on the retracements. I mean, it's staying between the 23.6 and the 3.8, so it's shallow. So it's aggressive. And that we're seeing, we've never had this type of scarcity adoption that I can recall anywhere. And I've looked and looked and looked. So I don't think any of us really have a grasp of how aggressive it can get when the big money starts coming in. And realize we have some big money coming in, but we don't have big money yet. I mean, we don't. Once we have regulation and the retirement funds start moving there, I mean, obviously Vanguard, is moving money over there. But at the same time, they're not pumping a 10 or 15 or 20% allocation to Bitcoin yet. I think at some point, Bitcoin will get to a 25% allocation once it hits as a reserve currency, quote unquote. And, governments start holding more and more Bitcoin as a reserve. As that continues to grow, that sort of becomes a monopoly. And we really haven't had that in any type of scarcity. So that is also too, we have two derivatives products, and forgive me, I'm not recalling the symbols at this point, but that migration too is going to be a significant factor on the growth. And that upside it's really not measurable. I mean, we could literally see tulip mania at this point, once that FOMO just starts, and I think it starts at 100K, because now everybody thinks, maybe it is going to $1 million. Maybe it is going to 300K. Then, everybody is jumping on board.
Right. So the financial industry has been telling brokers and advisors, you can put 5 to 10% into gold. And that's 30 years I've been hearing that. 35 years I've been hearing that since I was even an intern. You put 5 or 10% in the gold. It's a good store of value. Blah blah blah. And I think that the financial advisor industry is going to have the same approach. You can put 5 to 10%. When they talk to somebody who doesn't know nothing, which is 80% of the people they talk to, they'll say, yeah, we could put 5 or 10% in the Bitcoin. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Oh, we start with 5% or 3% or 2%, work our way up to 5%. That's how those conversations go. And probably I'd say a third of the people are going to be very amenable to putting 5% in the Bitcoin because they'll go, oh, look how good it's doing. I must FOMO, FOMO, FOMO. And then you'll have another third that are like, it's a scam. I'm never going to invest in it. And the other third, no idea. I mean, I'm in the camp of 12 to 25% in Bitcoin, 25 for really aggressive accounts like mine, but I'm only allocating 6 to 8% of capital to it and could get to 12%. Remember, I manage other people's money. This is the way the financial advisor industry thinks of it is I can't take too big of a bite of anything in case I get gristle. And, so a single digit percentage for a third of the financial advisory accounts out there, I think is for sure going to happen. Will it be 2/3 of those accounts with a handful having more? My guess is yes, but I don't know that until I see it. With the emerging markets, though, I think the Qatar thing was, I don't know if a former OPEC country how much did they put in? It was a couple $100 billion. It was a lot of money.
I actually didn't hear that.
Yeah, no, Qatar put money into Bitcoin a week or two ago. If oil countries are buying Bitcoin, folks, it's got a lot higher to go. And, when you take a look at the top 20 currencies that form all the baskets, Bitcoin's just going to be one of those currencies now. And, a 5 to 10% global position in currency, I think
you should scale that percentage based on its continued growth. As long as it keeps growing, at a 1/4% this quarter or at a 0.5% this quarter, anytime we get a drawdown, add a 1/4%, add a 0.5%, and just build from there. Because as the pool continues to grow, obviously, it's just like if you weren't in tech in this last run, really, how well did you do?
Right.
So your total allocation in tech, if you were at 25%, you banked. If you were at 8% in the sector, you did all right. So, I think looking at it, and that's my 2 cents, I'm not the advisor. I'm just the analyst guy.
Right. Well, so we think that there's around we're approaching $2 quadrillion on the planet of everything, with inflation and everything else. So 5% of $2 quadrillion is $50 trillion.
Yeah, unfathomable.
We're at a little over $1 trillion right now.
I haven't hit $1 trillion yet.
Right. So it's a little over $1 trillion finally. But but think, it might be a 50 bagger from here. And what if it's 10% of $2 quadrillion and plus inflation? Is it 100 bagger from here? My God. I just think that people need to, and we're talking over the course of a generation or 2 generations, but it appears that it is being adopted as part of the international currency basket. And that is
it's a store bet. That's what it is. We now recognize that it can't be manipulated from thieves or by governments, whatever. The blockchain is just, it has had no breach. There has been no hack,
right. Well, and you're going to see collateralized Bitcoin transactions in the future where nations, rather than trading with Bitcoin or using Bitcoin to, because they're not going to want to give it, they're not going to want to use it as a currency, but they will use it as collateral.
Yeah.
And when that derivatives, that's going to be they'll create the derivative market, not just for retail traders. Who cares about retail traders? When the big institutions and the sovereigns start collateralizing Bitcoin, and then you have to insure and create derivatives on all those transactions. Just mind blowing.
You can trade Bitcoin now with $1 million in treasuries on Interactive Brokers. They'll allow you to hold, and it's basically a margin account based on, and they charge you a premium for that. But it's already happening.
Imagine if countries do that.
Yeah. I'm sure there's somebody doing it. Mexico with their oil hedge is huge. I'm surprised they haven't drifted into Bitcoin with that.
Yeah, for as goofed up as Mexico is in some ways, and the fact that they can't control the cartels, the way that they've handled their oil trade in my career and watching the way they handle their oil hedging, it's really sophisticated and well done. I mean, they've had like 3 goof ups in 30 years. They get it right 9 out of 10 years.
Yeah, and actually they banked. I think it was 2021. I mean, they got a huge payout, like 900 million.
Did they? Yeah. So, these numbers get to be pretty astronomical, folks. And it's tied to energy. It's tied to international banking between nations and giant corporate and trillion-dollar corporations. Yeah. If Bitcoin's going to be the thing that they use to collateralize other transactions so they don't have to work so much in sovereign currencies. I mean, it took me years to come to this. Yep. Just watching it develop, because you didn't know that it was going to happen. I mean, there was theory behind it, but you didn't know that it would happen.
It had a good theme.
Yeah, and it's happening. I mean, the adoption, it's happening.
Well, Microsoft, there was a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but it's not been confirmed, that they're supposedly going to add support in the next operating system for Bitcoin and some other.
Well, for like encrypting it?
Well, they provide an update in there, security update.
Okay.
So when basically what that means is chances are that Microsoft is going to put a Bitcoin wallet in Windows.
Yeah, if they can make it easy for people to use Bitcoin encryption, because people don't really want to learn it.
Yeah, no, it would be absolutely an ingenious move for them.
Right.
Because all the transaction processing, I'm just stalking that idea because it's an ingenious move, because now they've just moved God knows how many transactions to their wallet.
Right. Dual verification using biometrics on multiple devices so that you can't lose it.
Yeah.
But it's how it works right now. But right now, if I want to log in on my iPad, it sends a message to my iPhone to make sure that I'm the same person. Right. That, I'm verifying a connection on one device, but on 2 devices, and it has to have biometrics or a code. So, as long as somebody doesn't cut my head off and walk around with it going zap, 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 steal my money when I'm dead, I mean, I guess I'm good. So
I forget what movie it was where they took the guy's thumb to get
and they pressed it up good. Yeah,
I can see that with that. Oh, yeah, I won't go there.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump. Let's take a look at. I want to look at oil. XLE, you talked about that for a second. And now, right now, we're at trend resistance. Okay, now, for those of you who've worked with me or followed my work at all, our third drive can always be an overshoot. So drive 1, drive 2, drive 3, possibly here. But we have a range I think we stay in. I think this band pushes out to late 2024. So I think between 94 and $85 on XLE is viable. I also pulled USO because it tends to be a little tighter range. It has the exact same look. Yeah, ironically, of course, being the same sector, it's likely to do that, but it has less of a range. So it also has more of a breakout possible. Puts it up at 105. So it has a little different look. So the commodity versus the oil stocks looks a little bit different. That little divergence to something. Now let's jump and talk to you have any questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay.
Just type in a message to somebody in the chat.
Okay, no, that's fine. All right, taking a look at the dollar, man, we got a nice push here. And one of my concerns is didn't get a major drawdown with that much of it. And flipping the coin, it's also extremely positive because that speaks to the strength that we have in the indices. On that note, we still have a little flight to safety in XLU, all right? And looking just straight out at the weekly on the S&P, I'm still thinking we push down here. However, my 3 is pushed a little bit now. So the primary wave 3 is up around 535. And we now are at the March 22, what historically has been the seasonal low for the year. And we have not gotten a low.
Right.
So, that whole dynamic really changed with really the FOMC minutes.
I think the next 6 weeks, because the dollar got a little stronger, we do get a shallow retracement in the SPY. but IWM seems to be breaking away from SPY. So, that money could just shift to small caps.
Well, that's very true. I mean, and the only thing that I hesitate, I'm going to go down to the daily here only because we can see it. All right.
Or the money shifts to Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, it's still, that's another factor too, but realize the ETFs offset that because you got to realize that was the flow. So even if it does shift the Bitcoin ETFs, it's still going into the indices. So, but, looking at, how we've got this noise up here, we had a primary wave set up short here on our 3, right? We got another one here, which, at that point was, I don't remember if it was a 2 or a B at that point, doesn't tell me historically. And now we've gotten a new primary wave set up short on this time. So, I mean, most of the time,
unless it breaks through. If it breaks through, it turns into a breakout.
It'll just extend. I don't think I think we need to get above this March 2021 resistance at 226.
I think that's where it's going to head this year.
Yeah. I mean, there's very strong possibility. I mean, we didn't get the shallow retrace here that we needed. You know what? I think I've gotten more conservative in the breadth of my opinion because so much has been taken out and we continue to see it in specific names when they're chasing those specific names. So that's, anything's possible in this one.
For what it's worth, seasonally, small caps usually are where you want to be in the second quarter.
Yeah. And I'll agree. Once the Fed tapers, okay, its current runoff, I think that one reason why I asked the question in chat is because I wanted to get a good visual of that date in my head, because once they can't sell, they don't have those assets to sell, that is probably a good time that we're going to see a rate cut, or that will be maybe close to peak rate cut. It's my thinking. But.
Right. Well, the second quarter is usually good for small caps because that's tied to the Russell 2000 inclusion and the front running that goes on with that. So Q2 is usually a good small cap quarter. Not always, but usually that's a quarter of strength, and then you go in the summer and now you got to rethink things. But
yeah,
we'll see if there's a breakout. I mean, I think it breaking out depends on the Fed really lowering rates and reducing QT. I mean, they could push it out.
Yeah.
I mean, they could. I don't think they will, but they could.
FOMC. It wasn't a great report. That was a nice pop. I mean, it was a nice pop. I mean, it really was. I didn't, and very often don't, because I think about everything. I really didn't have that even on my radar, that kind of break.
Yeah.
But we got off of FOMC.
Yeah.
All right, taking a look at the NASDAQ, we're just steady Eddie here. I mean, tight range. Last week, the S&P, we stayed less than a $2 range most of the week. I mean, it just was really, really tight. Sort of the same things happening in the NASDAQ here. So our intermediate wave 3 is pushed to maybe 461. And then we get a little bit of a back test on our 4 down to about 457, 458.
So I think the two stocks for us to watch with regard to NASDAQ are Apple and Tesla, right? So when Apple and Tesla both bottom, hopefully at the same time or about the same time, I think that would probably mark the bottom in QQQ. Apple and Tesla are 16% of that index. So 1/6 of the index.
Yeah.
When those bottom, which could be another 20% down on both of them, then I think that QQQ bottoms, but I don't think that means that QQQ has 20% downside because not everything's going to be in sympathy. So I think the downside on QQQ is 10-ish, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. And where does about a 10% correction from here put us? 45 points lower.
10% would put us, $50.
So right where those lines are that you have.
Yeah, 50 day.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, not somewhere between the 400 and the 50 day, but I mean the 400 price point and the 50 day at 377. Something.
Yeah. I mean, my guess is that 400-ish would be a pretty strong buy on QQQ.
Yeah, 403.88 is the 50% big number. So that's sort of my thought.
All right.
All right, let's take a look at treasuries. Now we're going to go in one of two directions. But you love that answer or that statement. We're either going to 110 or we're going to 72 now. There are I spent about 3 hours running outcome, just TLT, because I want to make sure I'm on the right side here. So, this 91.98 was important because it was a higher low. That was very important. So until we take out 96. We don't know if we're going to break out. And for us to break down, we need to take out that 91.
Yeah.
So we're sort of in this jitterbug range.
Haha, you used my word.
Yeah, I did. I adopted it specifically for that reason.
I still don't feel like I need TLT for recession insurance.
No,
but at some point I think I will. And I don't know when that is, but if so, I'm willing to wait on certain things and in certain portfolios. So on retiree portfolios where you want 20% of the money in some sort of bonds, some mix of municipalities and corporate and treasuries. And so maybe I go to 5 to 10% in TLT at some point. And I think the price I'm looking for is something in the 80s. And then it's just there because I know there's no downside.
Yeah.
Or little downside.
It still doesn't look done to me. The structure looks like a 3 drop. So, our 3 is way down here at the base of that line. So,
yeah, I think my guess is that it stops at that purple band.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
I mean, it's great support. I mean, this support here has helped. I mean, it's been significant, which happens to be our low here.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many people like me who would buy it in the low 80s.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree. But that's what I've got, bro.
All right. Well, let's call it a day. Let's get ready for the fantasy baseball draft. I have the first pick, Ron Acuna. Done deal. I've already entered the contract negotiations. He's going to be a member of the Plump Beavers. Actually, I take that back. This is a different league. It's not the Plump Beavers. All my teams have been named after the Beavers since the late 90s. Long story, has to do with Naked Gun, has to do with actually the beaver pelt trade going back a couple hundred years, and then something we don't want to talk about from college. But the league that I'm in is called Baseball Metallica, so a shout out to those guys. And I am in the Doors division, so I am going to change my name from week to week or maybe month to month based on Doors songs. And since it's the lead off of the season, we're starting off with Light My Beavers.
Now, I'll be impressed if you can do a dress up or a costume for each one of those.
Well, as it turns out, in the past, some of those things have happened. I actually at the Wisconsin State Fair, you walk around with a beer in your hand and corn on the cob or a sausage. And my buddy and I, Big Rob, who is on the Milwaukee Beavers baseball team, MilwaukeeBeavers.com is not a dirty site. It is a baseball site. And go ahead and take a look. That's a team that I started 40 years ago now, or I don't even know how old I am, 1990. And we were walking by one of these booths where you can buy stuff. And, they have the wall mounts and stuff that they were selling. And all of a sudden, we both saw it at the same time. It was a great big beaver with a great big tail. So that sits on his mantle now. And then we also bought a beaver pelt that we'd wear on on a tap of our baseball caps until the umpires got mad at us. All right. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you so much, Shooter. I think that this was incredibly helpful. Folks, buy the dips in Bitcoin. All right. That's all I got.
Have a great weekend, folks.